To Leo,
Saturday is draft day, baby. We're going to get right into my ownerships, and then in a little bit we'll run one of the puppies off on Underdog. But starting off with the quarterbacks, I'm just a little bit over 50 drafts in. Not too crazy investment. I've been ripping a lot of the puppies in the smaller drafts, mainly because this early, I really just want to get ADP exposure, get used to the drafts, see where people are, and kind of get my initial takes on that ADP. ADP is going to shift wildly between now and closer to the season, and more often than not, your draft's going to be better with that closing ADP. The consensus is usually better about adjusting as we get closer to drafts, and you obviously have injury news and all that stuff. But as it currently stands, as ADP currently lies, these are my quarterback exposures. So while Baker's the number one, I think, especially as we get closer to the season, that's going to come down a little bit more. I tend to be very flat on my quarterback exposure, especially because so much of that is driven by stacking and by the other people in your draft. You might draft Emeka Egbuka and maybe snipe Godwin, and someone just takes Baker because they like Baker. Especially in those lower entry fee drafts, that's certainly going to be the case. So quarterback can not necessarily be the most difficult. You can force quarterback, but especially because I think a lot of best ball quarterbacking can be made up through the aggregate, having a 3 quarterback build, which you can see. I'm pretty 50-50. If I get the great stack, like if I have that double up in Tampa Bay and like, I don't know, let's say Jamar Chase and Burrow, I'm fine sitting at 2 knowing that the upside is fully there to carry me most of the season. But I tend to be a 3 quarterback guy, fairly often. I think it's usually the best bet. I think people tend to undervalue those late quarterbacks like Rodgers, Brissett. You can see I have a decent bit of them. Bryce Young, like, they're going to give you like some saving grace in a week where either Baker's hurt for 2 weeks, Baker has a rough game, they lean on the running game. There's so much variance. Take the extra quarterback to give yourself a leg up against the other competition. But in terms of ones that I really like that the exposure may not necessarily indicate, Jaden Daniels, this will probably be my closing line exposure, again, because I'm not going to get too much higher than this for most quarterbacks. But I really like Jaden at like close to 70. You can see that's where my average pick is. I feel like that's so valuable. There's another one right in that range who I don't have too much of, mainly because I've been taking Jaden Daniels more often. But where is he? We got to find him. Jalen Hurts. Hurts at 72 feels so much better to me than Burrow like a couple picks earlier. Especially because those chase players are going to maybe reach a little bit for Burrow, especially as we get closer. I really like Hurts at 70. Like, yes, we lost A.J. Brown. That's a huge knock, but Hurts has all of that rushing production, all of those rushing TDs to kind of keep him afloat, that at 70, it just feels great. Because when Hurts does have that good game where he gets 2 rushing TDs, it tends to be a pretty good game. So pick 70 isn't drastic, deficit in terms of the rest of your team building. Similarly, when it comes to the QB1 this year, last year, the past 3 years, Josh Allen, I think pick 38 is really enticing. The closer you can get Josh Allen to the 4th round, it's fantastic. Like, in past years, we've been taking him probably early 3, mid 3 at the latest. If you can get him at the start of round 4, that is a ton of value. And that's not just for Josh Allen. That's been for most of the elite quarterbacks. Like, Lamar Jackson was a mid 3 last year. And obviously that's decreased because of the lack of production last year. But Josh Allen has been a very consistent set and forget it quarterback 1. Getting him in best ball at the start of round 4 feels like tremendous value. And that isn't necessarily reflected in my current exposure, but I definitely believe that. Herbert is another one I like. Again, this exposure will shift as I get more and more drafts. But in terms of the ones that I have a lot of, Dak Prescott is here because I really like both CD and Pickens. We'll see that when we get to the wide receivers. Bo Nix, I think, is very sneaky to have a really good season, and you don't have to invest like significant capital. Like, you're getting him next to Jordan Love. I like Jordan Love because I have a lot of one Green Bay wide receiver that we'll talk about in a little bit. But Bo Nix, I think the addition of Waddle is amazing. I think Sutton still has enough in the tank to be a very significant contributor. He has a supporting cast in Troy Franklin, the other guy who I don't remember, but like, they added more in the running. Like, Sean Payton, and Bo Nix has already proven that he's a pretty good quarterback. Obviously, you have the injury concern, but I believe in Bo Nix's ability as a passer enough that the foot injury isn't going to shade me too far off. And then the last one that we got here, BDG had a great video, not specifically on Jared Goff, but he touched on Jared Goff and basically pointed out that Jared Goff's production has been insane over the past 4 years. Not insane, but extremely valuable. Like, he made a great point that if Burrow had been putting up the past 4 years of numbers that Jared Goff has as a passer, we'd be like in love with it. We'd be gloating at every chance we get. And he's kind of just the forgotten quarterback every year. I think because so much of that experience we had earlier with him in his career where he wasn't a very consistent, great quarterback, Goff's going to be... I'm going to get Goff probably up closer to 15% because his production has been insane, and at 115, that's a beautiful place to be with him. So those are my just initial thoughts on quarterback. We'll shift into running back here. And at running back, you're going to notice I'm a little too heavy on some people, but I'm fine with that this early. Ray Davis, I got a lot of Ray Davis. And Ray Davis isn't that good, but I do think he's pretty undervalued in comparison to some of the other running backs that you're seeing in drafts. The most direct comparison here, another one that I have a lot of, and you're going to see there are a fair number of handcuffs here, mainly because my philosophy this early drafting is injury bug can hit any time. The handcuffs are not appropriately priced for the, displacement in time between when you're drafting and when the season is going to start. There is a lot of chance for injury. Handcuffs should be at a premium right now, and they aren't. So this exposure is going to lean very heavily to handcuffs right now, and that'll definitely shift as we get closer. But Ray Davis and Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson goes 20 picks ahead of Ray Davis. They're both equivalent handcuffs in my mind. Don't get me wrong, Brian Robinson has demonstrated more standalone value in his career. But in terms of this upcoming season, Brian Robinson and Ray Davis are more likely than not, with no injuries, going to fill a similar role. A very, short yardage, goal line potential, spelling their main RB1. But Brian Robinson, in the event of an injury for either starting running back, is in a much worse offense than Ray Davis is. And you can make the claim that Ray Davis is going to be, much more likely to end up in a committee, but you really think Brian Robinson is going to get 20 carries a game if Bijan goes down? I just personally think that last year, we saw with Ray Davis in his rookie year a lot more standalone value. Last year, we didn't see it at all. So that is cause for concern. But I also fully believe that James Cook's touches are going to kind of regress a little bit this year, and we're going to see Ray Davis have a couple of these spike weeks. Like, this is in his rookie year. He's demonstrated that he can give you a little bit of boost at your running back, and then with the last pick of your draft, he's fallen to 215 sometimes in my drafts. Take him and be proud. Jordan Mason is another one I really don't think is priced well enough. People are appropriately, worried about the committee, worried about Minnesota's offense. I kind of believe, even though I don't have a ton of exposure to Kyler Murray right now, that Kyler Murray is going to be a big step up. He may not have an explosive season, but he's going to do enough that this Minnesota offense with Jettas, with Addison, with Hawkinson, is going to be a lot better than it was last year. I think that's going to give a lot more opportunities to Jordan Mason. I think that Aaron Jones has been okay, but he's another year older. He's another year older for injury risk. Jordan Mason feels like a great handcuff right now, and he's great. He's priced fantastically. Now, the other two when it gets to above 20% in these exposures. Jonathan Brooks, I saw the stuff about, how healthy he is, the pedigree of prospect that he is, and the fact that Chuba Hubbard just kind of seeded the backfield last year. And I was getting a little too excited, to be honest with you. I'm cooling off a little bit because I do think, in terms of advance rate, the main way right now that I feel you should be drafting Jonathan Brooks is when you have two running backs that you feel very confident in. I don't think Jonathan Brooks is going to give you a ton of value, especially early in the season. And I think if you rely on that as your RB2, you might end up in a very tough spot in terms of early season points and a much weakened advance rate. But when you have two running backs you can truly believe in at those, RB1, RB2, and Jonathan Brooks can be the late season ceiling guy, I really like it there, especially at, I'm getting him around 110. So anytime Jonathan Brooks continues to fall past his current ADP, I'm willing to take it, but I am softening a little bit on him. Jaylen Warren's been good. His price is very easy. It's nothing too crazy. And I do think with Mike McCarthy, even with, Rico Dowdle coming in, I think the running game as a whole will improve with McCarthy, and you're going to see, a much more clean offense, let's say. With Tomlin never running the offense, we've kind of had some ups and downs. I think you're going to see, at the minimum, an RB2 season out of Warren, which is right where he's priced in at with the other guys, with some potential for, a lot better rushing TD production for him. The main thing I want to point out with running back, you see Genty, you see Saquon, you see Omarion Hampton. With that stretch of running backs, I'm personally going to be fairly flat on them. I don't really believe you should be too heavy on just James Cook, just Hampton, just Genty, just Chase Brown. Like, Chase Brown's one, he's probably the closing exposure I'm going to end up with Chase Brown. Where's he at? For all of them. I'm just searching. Chase Brown's right now at 11. That's probably where, 10% is probably going to end up on all of them, because I think they all come with their share of concerns, their bear and bull cases. And I think really trying to predict that, especially in the first round, your money isn't made in these best ball drafts with who you take in rounds 1 and 2. It's made with the guys in pick 70, pick 90, pick 130 that vastly outperform ADP. Their production is already priced in. Obviously, if Saquon Barkley has the RB1 season, you're getting value, but it's not as vastly efficient as when you took Josh Jacobs a couple years ago in round, 6, 7, and he was the RB1. That's what's going to be the differentiator when it comes to your production and your point scoring. So, as we get through the rest of these, Katron Allen is another one I love. Attacking a very soft backfield right now, one that's up in the air, has always been a great decision when it comes to best ball. I'm going to be a little bit lower on Katron Allen. Again, all of these late running backs are high right now because I think the handcuffs are not currently price adjusted. I think as we get closer, Bucky Irving I'm going to get a little down on. Harvey I'm going to get a little down on. You'll see me probably take more of the Kyrens, the Loves, the Scadaboos, the Jacobs, the ETNs. Those are going to increase a little bit more as we get closer to the season, but for now I'm fine taking those middle to late running backs that have upside in the event that something about their situation changes or new news comes out. For wide receiver, we were touching on this a little bit earlier with the quarterbacks. Another reason I really like Jaden Daniels is because I love Terry McLaurin. I don't understand why Terry McLaurin is priced so much later. I don't. He is, as it currently stands, going to have potentially the most targets in the NFL this year. There is no competition in that wide receiver room. He's a proven asset, and Jaden Daniels should be fully healthy, ready to go in an offense that is going to be good. This is not this isn't the Atlanta Falcons where Drake London is a very good wide receiver, but due to quarterback play, the offense as a whole can be up and down, and that might limit his TD rate. Terry McLaurin's going to be in a good offense. He's going to have a lot of opportunities to score you a lot of points, and I really just don't understand pick 40 ADP right now. If it maintains like this, I might get up to 30% McLaurin. I am fully fine doing that if I can keep getting him at pick 40. I feel like he's going to close closer to 30, so right now I'm going to keep doing it, but it doesn't make sense to me. When we look at Sutton, it's another one where the price just doesn't fully align with me. Don't get me wrong. We touched on Jalen Waddle a little bit, and I like Waddle more than my current exposure rate indicates. But with Sutton, even if he sees a decrease in targets, he's a great wide receiver in what's expected to be an above-average offense. Even if this overall point total goes down, he's still going to have the ability to give you those 20-point spikes, and at pick 90, when that might be your 4th, 5th wide receiver, closer to pick 80, but that's tremendous. As a wide receiver 4 for you, I love it. I love it. I don't really understand the softening on Courtland Sutton. I definitely will lower this probably closer to 20%. I'm a lot stronger on McLaurin than I am on Sutton. Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed is interesting. You can look at 2025 right here. It ain't that good. He was hurt. The games that he did play, he didn't do enough for you. 2024 looks a lot better. We had that amazing week 1 performance, and then a decent bit of, 20 plus, 19, 16, enough to give you value. And then in his rookie season is the best season that he's had. So what is causing this drop-off for Jaden Reed? In the Packers offense, we already know that Jordan Love spreads the ball around a lot. You have a fair number of worthy targets in Christian Watson, Jaden Reed himself, Tucker Kraft, and now Matthew Golden. But what the contract that they just gave Jaden Reed indicates to me is that, especially with the role of Watson and Golden being deep threats that are going to stretch the field, Reed has the safest target share among the bunch, while still having demonstrated he's a talented player and can give you spike weeks. Like, he's another player that, even if he isn't getting the insane target share that people ahead of him or maybe even closer to him are getting, he's going to give you those spike weeks in best ball, and I don't think that's appropriately priced right now in a lot of drafts. Worthy, I was taking a lot more before his ADP is now, moved up a little bit. It seems like it's settling in closer to 90. I think as we get closer, most people are just going to take Worthy because of the name value and the Kansas City offense. I was taking him when he was nearing closer to pick 100. It was a lot easier for me, but I still like him. I mean, 90 can be a little tough, but in best ball, I still believe in Worthy. Last year, he was extremely hurt. I think the rookie season wasn't fantastic, but demonstrated enough. And Kelsey's getting older. Rashee Rice is certainly a target, sink. He's going to take up a lot of targets in that offense, but when we talk boom-bust wide receivers, Worthy is still going to be that valuable pick, especially if you can get him closer to pick 100. And then Collins and Pickens, I think, are very mispriced right now. I think they're in the same lane as Justin Jefferson for this upcoming season, and you can get them, around later. Pickens demonstrated in a good offense with a good quarterback, he's gonna ball out. And I don't think you need a CeeDee Lamb injury for him to give you a lot of value, especially in a format where you don't have to worry about his, floor. Nico Collins is he's a wide receiver one that is not getting fully respected because of Stroud's struggles last year. But at the end of round 2, give me Nico Collins all day, every day. That's an easy item for me. Brian Thomas is in a similar boat to Xavier Worthy, but with a much higher pedigree. Last season was a struggle. We saw Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington step up and succeed better than Brian Thomas did last year. But I still hold on and believe that Brian Thomas is a good receiver and he's going to figure it out in this offense. I will be honest, though, that as we get closer to the season, I'm going to have a lot more Travis Hunter than Brian Thomas. Again, we are playing best ball. I do not give a fuck about Travis Hunter's floor. In the slightest, I do not care. When Travis Hunter comes in and scores a TD in a random game, that is value for me. I don't care if he puts up 0 in 2 other games. The thing for Travis Hunter is we look at who he's being taken around. Let's get to 140. Omar Cooper? Jalen Coker? I like Shaheed, but Isaac Tesla? Stephon Diggs? Denzel Boston? Let's say that Travis Hunter is appropriately priced in terms of season-long production. That at the end of this season, both he, Jalen Naylor, and Omar Cooper have similar outputs. Travis Hunter's percentage of those points is going to come from fewer games. If Omar Cooper scores 100 points, and that is spread out across 16 games, Travis Hunter's 100 points will be predominantly clustered around 5-6 games. That is insanely valuable in best ball. I don't understand the disconnect. I don't understand it at all. He is a screaming value right now at pick 140. Yes, he's going to be a part-time wide receiver. That doesn't matter because of how good of a wide receiver he is. I'm probably going to end closer to 20% on Travis Hunter, and I love every part of it. Quick discussion before we move out of the wide receiver zone here. Emeka Egbuka and Tet McMillan. I've been taking a lot more Egbuka simply because he was later than Tet, and he was in a better offense. So it didn't quite make sense to me that, Tet was going a lot higher when, while he may have a larger total target volume, he's playing in a much worse offense. You saw it with the Baker exposure in the previous video. I believe in the Bucs offense. and I believe in Emeka Egbuka. He demonstrated in that first half. Yes, he had the fall off later, but Egbuka is got production in his veins. I don't understand it, but now that Tet is going after Egbuka, my Tet ownership's going to go up pretty significantly. I really believe that Egbuka is going to be, a worthy part of this season. I think Tet is going to be a worthy pick as we progress into this season, and I'm going to take whoever's lower in the two of them. Just straight up. Tight end's going to be a quick and easy one. Tight end, you're going to see again, we can look at, my percentage of drafts. I much prefer 3 tight end to 2 tight end. I think the value deficit when you take a lot of these top tight ends is pretty significant, especially in a position that tends to have a lot of variance. If your top tight end goes down for a couple games and you only have 2 tight ends, you've shot yourself in the foot, just straight up. That doesn't mean that you never draft one of those top tight ends, but the difficult part for me is the top tight ends that have truly kind of broken fantasy, like Kelsey, like Gronk, like Julian Thomas, have been in great offenses. Brock Bowers and Trey McBride are going to give you value this season, but I think that value is much more seen in regular leagues where you have to start a tight end. When I can draft 3 tight ends and get within 20 points season long of, what that premium tight end is doing, why would I waste the early capital on those tight ends? It's not to say that I dislike them again, but you can make it up through 3 tight ends, especially when that pick that you would have spent on that premium tight end can be spent on a wide receiver asset that's going to, give you a lot more spike weeks at a position that's going to be a lot more consistent, less variable than tight end. Because most tight ends, especially as we get later in the drafts, they're just TD dependent options. But you hit that TD and that saves you in a week. That can keep you afloat. So when we look at specific tight ends, you'll see that I have K. Dotton. That's primarily driven by the Baker Mayfield exposure. Jake Ferguson, I think, is essentially the tight end version of a premium running back handcuff. And he's going in a similar range to those premium RB handcuffs. If anything happens to Pickens or CeeDee, we've seen that Ferguson can put up a spike week and a half. And when you can get him at 120, and he still has some standalone value, like, he's not going to be fantastic when everyone's on the field. He can still give you a rare 20-point game. It won't happen as consistently as this early season stretch. But 11 points is all you really need when you're drafting a tight end at pick 130 in best ball. And when you have the option, if there's any short-term injury to either premium wide receiver in the Dallas offense, he immediately becomes an extremely valuable week-to-week option. TJ Hawkinson is someone I'm going to come down a little bit on. I think 18% is a little too high. I'll probably close closer to like 10 on Hawk, maybe. It comes back to the point that I mentioned earlier about I believe Kyler Murray is going to be a much better option. TJ Hawkinson has struggled these past couple seasons, but I think that's dealt a lot more with overall quarterback play. And, obviously Jetta is going to be a huge target suck. But I think if this offense can get back to normal, solid play, Hawkinson's a great TD-dependent option, and you can take him at 160. If the offense is average, Hawkinson's a great play. He hasn't lost the touch. It's done a lot more for me to deal with the offense in general rather than Hawk's, insane decline. But you're getting him at 170. It's great value. The rest, I'm going to be very flat on all of these other late tight ends. I don't think there's, I think in most of your drafts, you should be taking the ones like Likely, like Gadsden, that are a little bit higher than someone like A.J. Barner. I have a lot of A.J. Barner just because he fills out good as the third tight end. But when we get this loaded up here, what was his TD rate? It's not showing up for me right now. I believe his TD rate was every other game. That's very unsustainable. A.J. Barner is not going to have a TD every other game this season. But I don't really care when I get him at 180. If he has one every 3 games, that's still of value to me. I think Freiermuth is in line to potentially see some improved target volume, some improved efficiency this year under Mike McCarthy. And then you'll just see, it's usually good offenses. I think Likely's the only one that I would really, Likely and Gadsden are the only ones here that I'll point out as, significant ceiling plays as we get later into tight end drafts. And Laporta's been one giving me a pick 100. Lions offense ain't, going to change too much. It's going to be a good offense. He hasn't, captured that rookie season, but he's great value at pick 100. So now that we've gone through that, let's get into an actual draft. Let's see this play out in real time. We're going to touch a little bit on what I think about Flock Fantasy's, in-draft tool. But you'll see the exposure kind of line up here in drafts. And I do think that is one of the valuable things about this tool. For me, at least, I'm not a supercomputer. I'm not going to remember mid-draft that, hey, I haven't taken any Derrick Henry, which I'm fine with this early in the season, to be fair. But at some point, I need a little bit of Derrick Henry exposure. He might not be one of those 20% players I have, but you need a little bit of Derrick Henry exposure. Even if you're one of the biggest haters of Henry, you think this is finally the year that he's going to fall off. I doubt it. But you need a little bit of Henry exposure. I'm not going to have a lot of them. I believe it was BDG that touched on this with Henry, that, sentiment kind of is extremely benefited by this insane 45-point week in Week 17 without Lamar on the field. But we can see the rest of the season was not that good. Henry's still going to be a bruiser. He's going to probably have a very high TD rate. But I'm not going to have a ton of Henry. I'll be honest with you. So that is one of the things that I immediately love about the tool, is being able to not have to know my exposures off the top of my head. I don't have to have a feel for it. I can see it directly in the draft. The syncing works very well. It's great for that. I also think seeing in your draft the ADP changes, it's not going to influence me too much, but it is good to know, hey, Rashee Rice is moving up boards. T. Higgins is moving up boards. I think what's better to me is who's falling, and who I can identify as someone that is falling unnecessarily. Travis Etienne falling, I don't know why. Because of this news that he's going to combine with Kamara? Okay. Do you think that Etienne's now suddenly going to go to 170 because Kamara's staying? I felt like the Kamara factor was already priced in 3-4 spots ahead. If he keeps falling closer down to like 40, I don't know. Ooh, Gibbs at 2. That's nice. Draft him with confidence. They paid him for a reason. He's going to get run, and it's going to be in an offense that is extremely fast-paced. Pace of play for the Saints is why so many of the Saints are priced in where they are. And I think don't let that, don't forget about that. In an offense that's going to be having a lot of plays, throwing the ball a lot, even for the running back, like ETN is a good pass catcher. That's why they brought him in. So I do think PPR, especially, I love ETN. Obviously, this is half point, so that's part of the reason that there's a little bit more concern with Kamara taking up some of those targets. But I wouldn't be too concerned. We'll touch closer to the middle of the draft about, when I bring this tool in. If you click on it now, you'll notice pretty much every draft, it starts off with what the ideal thing is. 3-5-7-3. That is almost always what the most efficient, the best breakdown is going to be. You can look at the specific exposures, but what you'll see most immediately is advance rate this early in the draft doesn't change too much. This advance rate is also very heavily influenced by the fact that I took a running back at pick 2 of round 1. You'll immediately notice if you have this and you select Justin Jefferson at pick 10 or CeeDee Lamb at pick 9, your immediate advance rates, regardless of what you do the rest of the draft, is going to be better. Just because in the very, couple year historical data that we have, the late round 1 wide receivers have predominantly been better than the top end RB1. That's not to say that you shouldn't draft Jahmyr Gibbs at pick 2, but it's just a reality of the typical advance rates for having invested that capital into that player. We see right here, 2 of my favorite picks, Collins and Pickens. I'm not going to shy away from them. We can look at the production. Collins is going to have a much higher volume. Pickens is going to be in a much better offense. I don't understand why they aren't getting the credit they deserve, but I'm going to draft him all day, every day, and be happy about it. And the benefit, especially with Nico, because of concerns about Houston's offense, is that it's very easy to get Stroud as your second or third quarterback. Not necessarily your third, your second of three later in the draft. He's around like pick 140, I believe, and it's very easy to get him, feel comfortable about it, especially after you've invested into Collins. With the second pick, I am not a massive fan of Love. I don't really love the 2 tight end with McBride. So this is the situation where we'll go with McBride here just to test out the 2 tight end. I don't love 2 tight end. If you missed it earlier, I went through my tight end exposures and I explained why I don't love them, especially because both of the 2 premium tight ends this year are in subpar offenses. McBride has demonstrated, we can look right at it, it doesn't matter that he's in a bad offense. But my problem when it comes to best ball is the value in being able to start McBride confidently and not have to worry about tight end for your regular fantasy leagues is lost. And I feel like you put a lot of stake in a tight end that just as equally as any other player can get hurt and basically derail the entire draft. Now, because it is Trey McBride, hey, if he puts up 40 points in best ball playoffs, you're going to advance. It's going to be tough not to. So that's kind of the trade-off that you're making. I personally like a lot more going through tight end. We'll see already the construction. There's not much advantage to 3 tight end after you've invested into Trey McBride. So this is the most immediate value for the Flock Fantasy tool. If you're new, if you don't understand it at all, hey, you spent a very high pick on a tight end. You should cap at 2 tight ends because a 3rd tight end isn't going to add anything, whereas the 8th wide receiver might give you a slightly better advance rate in semifinals. But the clear and biggest thing to me about this tool is the differences in advance rate are so extremely marginal. What matters more in these drafts is who you are drafting, not necessarily the final breakdown. To a degree. Obviously, you can't just draft 1 quarterback. You can't just draft 3 running backs and expect it to perform well over the course of the season. But I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about running backs. The winning formula isn't, oh, I need 1% higher in advance rate by taking my 8th wide receiver instead of my 7th running back. You can kind of feel that out yourself based on the capital you invested at each position. What's going to give you the advance rate is, hey, I took Josh Jacobs. He had an amazing season 2 years ago. I'm winning all the money. That's it. That's all you really have to worry about, and that's all that's going to be a predominant factor. Of course, stacking has been, always will be great. When we were talking about quarterbacks, we mentioned how Jared Goff is very undervalued. This sets up perfectly, in my mind, for a great 3 quarterback build with Goff, Stroud, and whoever else you want later in the draft. Devontae Adams, thinking Jameson Williams, I'm talking about Devontae. I have taken previously, when we go Gibbs, I've taken Swift because of that matchup and because I believe Swift is a solid option, especially in this range. It's going to be a good offense, on par with New England and Tampa Bay. And I think he's, the safest bet of those other 2 good offenses to have consistent volume, even with the threat of Kyle Monangai. I'm more concerned about Kenny Gainwell in Tampa Bay than I am Kyle Monangai in Chicago. I think Swift is a solid pick. I think he's the safest of these 3, which in the RB2 is usually what I want. I've been taking a fair bit of Trevion Henderson. You can see that there. Because I understand fully, as I'm sure that most of you do, that Josh McDaniels, New England's OC, is going to run a committee. No matter how good Trevion Henderson is, it's going to be a committee. But if you want to look at what Ramondre did last year, it ain't that good. That's not going to change the fact that this will be a committee. That will not change the fact that this will be a committee. But Ramondre did it all in the last few weeks. I don't view Ramondre as that much of a threat. He's a volume threat, but I think in terms of like ceiling, Henderson showed it as a rookie, and I think there's going to be more opportunity this year for him. People are scared off by the fact that it's going to be a committee. You can price that in and still understand that, hey, he's a good player even in a committee. Jahmyr Gibbs has been fantastic in a committee. He's not as good as Jahmyr Gibbs, but there have been running backs that outperform a committee backfield, despite that restriction on them. When we look at these next couple picks, I mentioned Jalen Hurts earlier. I really love him. The other part that I really like is the community as a whole all pretty much know stacking is important. So part of the other reason that I really like Jaden Daniels, I really like Jalen Hurts, these premium elite quarterbacks that have rushing as an important part of their arsenal, is they can provide you week-to-week value as a rusher without needing the stack. And I think too many people, at least what I've seen in these early drafts, less so in these $5 ones. But stacking is at the forefront because it's been hammered home to us. Stacking is the ceiling play that's going to win you these tournaments. But when you can take someone like Jalen Hurts and kind of slightly deviate from that for a quarterback that doesn't need the stack to still reach a tremendous ceiling, I think there is some value in it. And that'll probably rise as I get more of him closer to the season. Looking at 71 and 74, I have no interest in Caleb. We already talked about, Goff being underpriced and me having the stacks for him. I don't know who's drafting Parker Washington. It sure as hell ain't me. So, good luck. Best to you. I prefer Jaylen Warren over Tony Pollard. Yes, there is the threat of Rico Dowdle, but I do think that the Steelers, rushing efforts are going to be a lot easier come than Tony Pollard's and Tennessee's. I do have, a decent bit of exposure to Cam Ward, but I trust Warren and the Steelers a lot more than Pollard. In terms of QJ versus Lemon, I do think Lemon is a great ceiling play. The difficult part for me is I don't know how many targets Devonta soaks up as opposed to Lemon. Lemon essentially, at least based off what, the Dynasty community has seen in his production profile and his analytics, is that he's going to be contending with an area of the field that is already kind of, beefed up in the Philadelphia offense. Goddard, Stowers, the constant rushing, effect from Saquon. I believe in Mekhi Lemon's talent, even though I do also believe that he's kind of a dunce. So I would rather have QJ because I think the ceiling of Mike McDaniel coming to LA, vastly improving the passing offense with their amazing O-line being fully healthy this year, is a very exciting part. And it's an avenue I see as more likely than Mekhi Lemon becoming A.J. Brown this year. So that's where I stand.
Can a card express who we are? Yeah. And see.
Herbert, the problem I have with Herbert is his price. It feels like a McDaniels, QB1 season is just strongly priced into it already. Obviously, everyone just like me kind of believes it. But it feels a little tough, especially with a head coach that I think is going to be happy to run the ball and run it effectively with Mike McDaniel's scheming. As we come up on this next pick, Monunga would be great. Lean into our Detroit stacking with the Week 17 matchup. I also think he does have a lot of standalone value. We've seen Monty have it in a Ben Johnson offense already. So I'm fine with taking the RB2 on a Ben Johnson offense that also proved himself last year. They were one of the best rushing teams in the league last year, and I have no cause for concern on that last year. Obviously, they did have the departures in their O-line. That can be worrisome, but I think overall they'll be able to scheme their way through it. If Manungai ain't there, I'm fine with Corum. I personally still fully believe and love Kyron, so I'm not as big on Corum, but in a great offense, if I'm wrong about Kyron, it's a lot of leverage for Corum. We might go fully Detroit stack here if Manungai isn't there and Laporta is. The thing with me is I'd rather, leave Laporta on the board to get at the next pick than take him first. Ricky Pearsall is someone that I'm a little under-owned on, but I do think, offers tremendous value. I think I still have to leave Laporta on the board, because I really don't want Pittman or Wilson. And it'll also we can talk through why I'm a fan of Pearsall. With Pearsall, I don't think people are appropriately pricing the availability for targets in San Francisco's offense. I really don't. Do we just take Dobbins here? Yeah. I don't love Dobbins. It's evident in my ADP. But I've mentioned earlier that I think Denver has a great opportunity to be an offensive value this season. I truly do. And Dobbins, even if he is low on the volume totem pole, when healthy has been a very valuable asset. When I can take him as my RB3 instead of an RB2, it feels a lot safer than me. Back to Ricky Pearsall. So with Pearsall, I don't think it's appropriately priced in target availability in San Francisco's offense. Obviously, Mike Evans is here. He's going to command a large target share. But we've seen Juwan Jennings leave. Ayuk didn't play last year, so that's not, much concern. Debo's gone. Kittle is hurt, and I don't think people are appreciating how long it might take for Kittle to get back on track. And when you look at Pearsall and his performances, he can give you a solid spike week. We're talking about a guy that was shot and came back, still had some spike weeks in an offense that's going to be very good, was hurt then the next year, still had some solid spike weeks. I get it. At a certain point, a player might just be unlucky, injury prone. But at San Francisco, anything is good. It's going to be a great offense again this year. And while Mike Evans is going to be a massive part of that, there is availability with Kittle hurt and on recovery. Even if Kittle is playing, he's not going to be 100% early in the season. You can view that as a... What is it? Who's the tight end's name that I'm blanking on right now? Tonjes? Yeah. You can view that as a Tonjes thing. But much more clearly to me, it's a Pearsall thing. Pearsall's going to have availability and target availability. I'm talking on-field availability. He's there. He's healthy. And targets are open in an offense that's going to be good. Don't really overthink it that much past that. So if Jonathan Brooks falls here, this is the exact kind of thing. In this range, 10 picks after ADP, Jonathan Brooks is a screaming value to me. And I don't really understand anyone that would tell you otherwise. Given the pedigree of prospect, given the fact that we saw just last season Chuba Hubbard cede this backfield to someone else. Jonathan Brooks at 114 is fantastic. So, props. Luckily, though, we'll hopefully get Goff way past ADP, unless this guy takes his third quarterback by round 10. And this is also a good point to mention. if you are going to be drafting a lot, that's what you should be doing. Does it suck when you draft Gibbs and JMO and don't get Goff because he goes at his regular ADP? Yeah! It sucks. But when you get him 10 spots after, you're much better off than taking him 10 spots earlier. I would love to take Kelsey, but I don't think I can bring myself to do that. Yeah, I can't bring myself to take Kelsey. I also think Shakir is a little undervalued. He's in a good offense. Don't get me wrong, DJ Moore is a threat to his regular target volume. But early in his career, Shakir was a valuable deep threat for Buffalo. So I think what's more likely to happen is even if his volume decreases in a very good Buffalo Bills offense, his ADOT is going to increase, and he'll be a fine fifth wide receiver boom or bust option that we can rely on. So happy to do that. The one benefit here with having, if we had taken Kelsey, is, in my mind, you get stuck in, okay, I am completely set at tight end. My second tight end, I feel great about it. If Trey McBride is short-term hurt, if he has a bad week, we have Kelsey right behind him, who is always a good TD option, especially close to the goal line. Kansas City loves to throw the ball. Kelsey's a TD hog. That said, you don't need that. Yes, Kelsey can fit into the slot into the flex position. But I do think we tend to overvalue safety and stability in best ball rather than ceiling and depth. By that I mean, it feels good to have two really good tight ends. Does it provide you equivalent value to the feeling? Not necessarily. And that's something I think we can touch on later when we get into Hayden Winks' data where he's demonstrated what rounds have been the most valuable for quarterback, second quarterback, third quarterback, and likewise with running back.
We're the world's most advanced program, built to control.
Obviously, we're going to try and link up with Stroud here, get our Nico stack, feel really good. And the thing with these two is this is where I think the tool becomes extremely valuable. 2% advance rate is tiny, but it's not negligible, right? The times, though, that I will ignore this 2% is when I have significant stacking, like a Jared Goff double. Hey, we lost Stroud. So now we're almost assuredly going to go 3 quarterback. Because what I was going to say is when I have 2 stacks, well stacked, and I wouldn't be able to stack further by taking Schultz as my second tight end later for Stroud, I would have felt a lot more comfortable sitting at 2 quarterbacks, even if it is overall subpar in advance rate, because the advance rate isn't accounting for stacking and stuff like that. We're going to take Woody Marks. I do think he's a valuable piece right now. Monty is going to, much to my disagreement, take a significant portion of the touches out of the backfield in Houston. It's a very common thing in the NFL. Running back that doesn't get enough capital, even after an okay season. Woody Marks was not great. He was not fantastic, but he was okay. They'll get passed over quickly. But I still think Marks is going to have standalone value. I think he's good enough that this will be a committee. And while he may not have a ton of the goal line touches that he'll likely cede to Montgomery, I do think passing down work as a standalone value indicator is solid for him. And we just need a little bit more running back depth. Plus, solid handcuff. This is a range that I am far from in love with. So we might just take Gadsden and clear out our tight end room. It's also the other part about stacking that I don't think people necessarily key into is essentially you may not have Herbert, but if Herbert has a good season, you're going to benefit from having both QJ and Gadsden. That's not a massive driver. Obviously, the ceiling play is much higher when you have someone like Herbert with QJ and Gadsden, or just with QJ. But you can still stack into the team without having the quarterback present, with a belief that, hey, Herbert has a QB1 season, doesn't have the quarterback 1 season, but LA is a very efficient offense, gives a lot of opportunities for both QJ and Gadsden to score. And I think Gadsden is a solid 2 when you take one of those early tight ends, and that he still maintains a high ceiling. It's not a significant investment to pick 150. He has a very believable bull case with his ceiling, and while he may not have, the most impressive floor, that's what Trey McBride is there. So when we look at construction here, based off of our running backs, where we selected them, the Flock Fantasy tool does indicate, hey, you should stick at 5 running backs. But again, most with this, you're not going to sit at 4. You're only sitting at 4 when you have 3 running backs for the first 4 rounds. But the difference between 5 and 6 is negligible. This is one of my main aspects I want to touch on with the tool. Difference between 7 and 8 wide receivers is pretty negligible. In fact, 7 at this, current investment has been better. Obviously, 81,000 teams. The data will get better over time. But the clearest thing to me is it matters more so. Typical draft benchmarks matter more than, hey, I need to get to 8 or 7. By that I mean the benchmarks of having a quarterback by round 12. Having 5 wide receivers by round 10. Those are the typical benchmarks that are going to vastly improve your advance rate over 7 versus 8 wide receivers. And that's something that the tool does not currently account for, adjust on, comment towards. We could further stack into Detroit with Tesla. I don't hate that, especially because I do think he'd be a vast outperformer if we saw any injury to Amon-Ra. But I think given we're only at 1 quarterback, Bryce Young is 10 spots after ADP, even without any stacking into him, he'll give us some decent value here as a second quarterback. And now, this is the point of the draft where I personally get a little okay, go screw yourself. Because I'm gonna bank on one of the quarterbacks falling. That's just what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna reach for Aaron Rodgers when I only have Jalen Warren. I'm not gonna take a naked Mendoza. I don't think that's super valuable. And that's simply because how some of the draft shook out for us. So I'm going to be more than happy, rather than taking Mendoza now, getting Geno Smith or Jacoby Brissett with one of my last picks. I don't need them to be the world as my third quarterback. I don't need to rush to my third quarterback. More often, you should be having a little bit more urgency towards quarterback 2 than I did with Bryce Young here. But a lot of times, in a lot of drafts, these quarterbacks will fall to you, especially later in the draft. And it doesn't really matter who. But one of them will be there, and all you need out of QB3 is just them to be on the field. That's it. So, we've even just now seen, after that pick, it shift from being much more valuable not much more valuable, but being more valuable to take the 6th running back than the 8th wide receiver. But again, I think that's something you can kind of inherently get a feel for. You can look at my running back room. Jahmyr Gibbs is great. I like Jalen Warren. Dobbins is all right. I need more help at the running back room. You know that when you're drafting. You don't need a slight differential in advance rates to tell you that. So again, we'll touch on this more, but yeah. So obviously, if Rodgers is there, I am more than happy to take him, significantly past his ADP. Otherwise, we'll just wait a little bit more. Maybe we take Brissett at the pick, because I do much prefer Brissett to Tua. And now that we're kind of past this whole contract drama, I'm happy to take him, especially because I have McBride. He fits pretty well into what we're building out here. And we definitely need a 3rd quarterback. A naked Bryce Young isn't really enough in my eyes to get you there, even though I do really like Goff. You can see here, about 1.5 points better advance rate. It does suffer in terms of finals and semifinals, but what that's indicative of is of the 16 and then the 1% of that 16 that make it to the finals. Yeah, if you made it there with 2 quarterbacks, more likely than not, you either have a top 3 quarterback or 2 really good quarterbacks. I don't know that we have 2 really good ones, and I don't think we need to have Goff be that guy. I think the benefit of having Goff double stacked here is that we have the ceiling play week to week more so than like Goff's going to advance rate me based on ceiling alone. Take Jacoby Brissett here, get our 3rd quarterback, be safe, and then our last 2 picks are going to be running backs. You know him, you love him, you know I love him. Ray Davis, welcome to the squad, and he fits great bye week wise. I understand I have too much Ray Davis. I know it in my heart of hearts that I have too much Ray Davis. But I'm going to keep fucking doing it. I'm going to keep fucking doing it. Point blank. Mike Washington, I don't get it. I assume it's people thinking that they're going to bring a committee over from Seattle. Ashton Genty is much better than Charbonnet or Walker ever were. I don't think Mike Washington... He'll have some very limited standalone value, and he is a premium handcuff. But he's a premium... Well, he's not a premium. He's a handcuff in a bad offense. It's not very premium to me. So I don't really understand it. I'd much rather have Kaytron Allen, who I think is more directly in line to take goal line carries in the Washington offense that is going to be better than Las Vegas' offense. And I just think Kaytron Allen is good. I think he's undervalued. I think both him and Singleton are undervalued currently. I think there are some running back rookies that are not effectively priced in just because their draft capital didn't show it, but they, I think analytically and on tape, have shown that they're much better than what the current consensus is. So I am a big fan of Kaytron Allen. I might take Nick Singleton just to fucking decrease my current pick rate of him. Part of that pick rate is caused by an auto draft the other day where I drafted him way too early. But live and let die. And at 215, I'll just eat it. It also does help that he's going into Warren. Have a little bit of effectiveness there. So right now it is looking like Singleton. If we do have to fully pivot, I don't give a damn about Jordan James, George Halani. Justice Hill is okay when you have Lamar or are stacked into Cincy since that's their 17 matchup. Desmond Claiborne, maybe I could get behind just because there's a bull case where he beats out the Minnesota running backs. I'm not really too set on that. I do think Samaje Perine is a solid pick if you have Burrow and Higgins, Burrow and Chase, but don't have Chase Brown. I think that's solid. James Conner is honestly interesting, but I think it's Going to be very little and not enough out of Connor. So as you can see, this is part of the reason why I have a lot more Singleton. I think there's a much more likely chance that Singleton can be of value to you in your best ball drafts, more likely than Jordan James or George Helani. And I thought that value was even earlier than pick 215. But we'll see. Like, I personally do not think that Tajay Spears is any kind of threat at all. So I kind of believe that Nicholas Singleton is better than Spears. And while I don't think he's going to take over the backfield from Pollard, I do think he'll be given some opportunities to demonstrate himself. So with that, draft done. We can check out. Yeah, this is the other thing. Advance rate isn't good, and I can guarantee you, maybe that's a little bit because of the premium tight end. A large portion of this advance rate is driven by the fact that we were solely slotted into pick 2, and Gibbs and Bijan are the picks there at 1 and 2. I have done a very similar, build from here, just with a wide receiver in round 1, and the advance rate is better. So that is another part of the thing that I don't think the tool appropriately indicates, mainly because that shouldn't be, what you're drawing from. And this is also like, the difference is 8% versus 10%. It's a 2% increase in advance rate. 2%. That isn't very significant, and you shouldn't let it impact you that much. But again, I mentioned it earlier. I think the biggest thing for me is simply that you can go into these drafts with an idea of what your benchmarks should be. And I don't necessarily think you need a tool that's going to tell you, hey, you need a 5th running back. I don't think you need that. I really don't. You've seen throughout this video that the advance rate is not significantly different. And you can kind of get a feel for what is best for your team simply by the capital that you've invested. It's a pretty natural assumption. And when I spoke on benchmarks earlier, we can see this with, alright, kill yourself, Twitter. You can see this with what Hayden Winks has posted. And I think even more so than what he's posted is that this graph is not very indicative of these changes. You look at this immediately, you're like, holy shit, don't ever draft a quarterback in round 2. And I still would agree with that. But the difference between drafting that first quarterback in round 2 or round 3 has been 70 points. Look at the scaling on this graph. From 1,500 to where that point is for round 3, taking your first quarterback, is 10 points over the entire season. 10! 1-0! Don't get me wrong, in some leagues, 10 might be the difference maker, but a lot of times, the teams that are advancing by 200 points, not 10 points. And we don't even see an 100-point swing on this graph. That doesn't mean you shouldn't understand this. See those slight edges. Those slight edges are going to be very important in terms of your overall advance rate. But we don't see a 100-point swing in anything on this graph. The 100-point swing would be having 0 quarterback by round 16, which almost no one is going to do. But again, I don't think you necessarily need this tool to tell you, hey, I need a quarterback by round 12. I don't think you need the tool to tell you, yeah, you should have 3 quarterbacks. You can intrinsically know, I haven't taken Burrow, I haven't taken Hurts, I haven't taken Lamar, I haven't taken Allen. My first quarterback was Baker Mayfield. I like Baker Mayfield. I may have stacked into Baker Mayfield, but I probably need a second, depending on who that second is, if he's not super stacked into, likely a 3rd quarterback. You know that just by what you've done in your own draft. And again, rather than focusing on 1%, half a percent, very minimal changes in advance rate. The more important thing than the difference between your 7th and 8th wide receiver is knowing that you need to take a quarterback by a certain point. And then knowing, based on when I took that quarterback, I should take a 2nd or 3rd. But again, these are important small points for you to know, but they aren't going to make or break you. The difference between taking a quarterback in round 3 and taking your first quarterback in round 13 is negligible. I've mentioned earlier that I think Josh Allen is a great value this season because you can get him in the 4th round, whereas in previous years, people have been taking him in the 2nd round. You should not be taking a quarterback in the 2nd round. But you can get Josh Allen close to the early 4th. That's going to differentiate from this small 5-point drop-off. But the more important thing is that 4th round pick for Josh Allen lets you take someone else with your 3rd pick that's going to give you a higher ceiling for your team. We can look at it for running back as well. Zoom in on this. The important thing is simply that, hey, you can't go with absolutely no running backs. This chart is much better to me than the quarterback one. I think the quarterback one demonstrates you can a lot more likely make up the value for a quarterback through 2 or 3 of them rather than taking the elite one. We see an 100-point swing on this running back chart. We see it very clearly. And we also see, I think one of the most important things, the dead zone exists. You see it right here. 2, 3, 4, 5. Having that many running backs through the dead zone does not matter. Does that mean that you shouldn't be taking running backs in the dead zone? Fuck no. Josh Jacobs was in the dead zone. I keep talking about Josh Jacobs on the stream, but he's the most clear and present value. Think about Kenny Gainwell last year. Kenny Gainwell was in the 17th round, 18th round. Rico Dowdle was in the dead zone last year. The point isn't to avoid the dead zone entirely. It's to find the values within the draft. We see swings in here. The important swings are, hey, have one running back through round 5 maybe. I even think the cutoff for 4 is a little strict. Have 2 running backs by round 10. If you want to be very strict, have 2 running backs by round 5. That's likely the better option most of the time, but let the draft come to you. You can set up these benchmarks for yourself that I should have a QB by here. I should typically have my 2nd or 3rd running back by X. But more important than that, more than when you take your 3rd running back, when you take your 4th wide receiver, is who you are taking. It's as pure as that. So it's just something I wanted to touch on, that while you need, if you're going to be doing a lot of drafts, I think the most valuable part of the Flock Fantasy tool is being able to see all of your exposures at a glance. Being able to see, what is my breakdown? All of this data is what's most valuable to me. What are my stacks? Who do I not have enough of? Who am I drafting too much of? What's my ADP versus average pick, you know? What are the teams that I'm heavily invested into? 60% of the Pittsburgh Steelers? That's probably too much. And that's coming from a Steeler fan. That is the value of this. The value of this tool is looking at combos for me. Hey, how many teams, when I've drafted Gibbs and JMO, this is better when you're mid-draft, how many of those teams have Jalen Hurts? None that I've drafted? Okay, maybe let's consider it. But I think what you should not fully, grab a hold of are these marginal differences in 7 and 8 wide receivers. Again, the more important thing is, when do I take them? Avoiding the significant drop-off, which is having 0 running backs through round 4, 5, 6. It's stuff like that. And I think that's what's truly going to help you in your drafts, more than a tool like this that is very marginally impacting your drafts. If you're doing a ton of drafting, the tool is still extremely valuable. But if you aren't doing drafting en masse, spending a lot of money on best ball, I don't necessarily think that you need this. It's not to say it's not valuable, but in terms of the efficiency of the money that you're spending and the time that you're spending on this, you just don't need it. So those are my thoughts. Appreciate you joining me for the draft today. Going to be back with another one sometime soon. I'll probably update all of my exposure as we get closer to mid-late August, and we'll have a full breakdown on who I like most as well. I'm also going to have the targets video out, again, closer to the season, because one of the difficulties with it is as we wait for people like Debo to find a team, Diggs to find a team, that's drastically going to influence the target rates, and it becomes difficult to then adjust for teams because it shifts the entire sheet that I'm working in. So I do want to wait until we're closer to the season. We have more info to demonstrate all those target share expectations from me. But until then, appreciate you joining. I'll be back with another draft soon. Have a good one. Peace.